because if you're doing loads of small objects, there's a higher failure rate. And also the value of small objects, because it's volumetric, becomes like infinitesimally cheap when it shouldn't be. Like people will value like a pen at £1, but then value a box that uses 1,000 times more material at £6. There is a really big difference behind the amount of material in something small, which is almost nothing, and the amount of material in something big, and somehow they will make the small thing more expensive because it's denser. I don't know the psychological impact of price versus size, but there is that size.
There is some psychological difference. And when we look at these Etsy sellers, they're playing that psychological difference. So when we were filming the Print Fix Friday video, I went to the Etsy 3D printing page. I clicked on the first dragon link that I found because it said it started at $2.99.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
It was for like a tiny little mini dragon. I looked and said, there's no way that uses more than like 50 grams of filament. So in my mind, those are the purge blocks for the bigger dragons. Like in my mind, that's what I would use, is like, I would use these smaller dragons as purge for the bigger ones, and then I'd sell them for, you know, basically material cost. But you're going to pay like $8 in shipping and or whatever it is. But your psychology, and thank Uncle Bezos for this, by the way. This is pretty much all on Amazon at this point. We are psychologically drawn to the lowest cost providers because as a user, we recognize that if everything else is the same, why would I pay more money for the same thing when I can get it for less from somebody else? Well, a lot of people don't understand the value of their own time, okay? That's where I think this whole doing business on Etsy falls through, right? Like, if you are going to consult with us professionally, you are paying $150 an hour for my time. Minimum. You're paying $150 an hour for my time. Often I'm billing around $250 an hour for my time. It depends on what we're doing. So like if we're scanning, I bill $150 an hour for my time, $200 an hour for the machine time, $350 an hour combined. If it is for consulting, where we are doing like, hey, I want to build a print farm for my business to bring it all internal rather than having to outsource it, it's $250 an hour. Currently, price is subject to change because expertise is brought to the table. I've been in this industry for 17 years as a hobbyist, like what, 14, 15 as a professional, owning businesses in this industry for 15 years now. So it matters. Your time matters. But let's say you want to pay yourself $30 an hour. You're spending 10 minutes to slice the files, making sure they're good, another minute or two to get it transferred to the machine. You're going to clean your build plate. You're then going to run the print. From there, you have to clean up the machine. You have to clean up the part, take it off the build plate, pack it into a box, make the shipping label, print the shipping label, attach the shipping label, and then bring the part to the post office. Do you notice how all of that is added time? That added time is things that you need to get paid for. And if you're not getting paid for it, you're losing money. The last thing we want to see is people losing money, but it happens so often because they don't understand the value of their own time.
Yeah, like I'm literally going through the Etsy store and I just put 3D printed in. And oh my God, the amount of low effort just tacked on the 3D printing side, it's embarrassing. Like, yeah,
some of them are just stealing each other's photos. Like they're just stealing each other's photos, right?
I mean, like we've got people selling Roctopuses and Flexi Dragons, and there's no originality in.
There is. You're just not going to find it on the first couple of pages.
It's just not going to be there because this is what people expect now from 3D printed stuff. Is there is now a stigma that it is, well, it's bad. Because the only thing we're seeing is hell. No, I'm going to go back a little bit further. I went to a little like Comic-Con local event in my city. I've been to big Comic-Con events. They're always fun, but I went to a little local Comic-Con event. Local. Like Lincoln is not a big city. It's only got like 20,000 people.
It's very small.
It is quite a rural city. It is like the biggest one up north of this type in the Midlands. But that's not going too far. There were at most 50 stalls at this Comic-Con event. Like, it was a small event. We had 3 dedicated only to selling Flexi Dragons. And then I just sit back and I go, why? Why is nobody able to see the fact that if you have 3 stalls selling the same thing, you have now depreciated the quality of that because now they know it's not one person making it. And it's the same on Etsy, is if you have 3 people selling the same filament of just a part, how do I know you're not the same person? And I'm going to assume you're not. Well, what's the genius behind it? What is the craftsmanship that goes into any of this? Because it isn't. It's just you pressed print, walked away, and now you've got all these rainbow colored crap. And it winds
So
me
here's
up.
where it gets even more interesting. You can buy these 3D printed dragons in bulk out of China.
Yeah, you can get injection molded 3D printed dragons out of China.
Let's ignore the injection molding stuff right now. That you could have an entire business selling these models and not own a 3D printer.
And you know what?
Because you can,
I don't
you can
even
buy
blame
them.
China. I don't blame China. China is probably doing the one right thing. They probably have one centralized area to do all of it.
No, well, the companies that sell them do, but you know, what they're doing is they're taking advantage of machine downtime to produce stuff and then sell it in bulk, right? Yep. And don't hate the player here, hate the game. The game has become this, and I think that's what Etsy is cracking down on. I believe that this new change is actually more for to allow Etsy to skirt dealing with DMCA stuff. So hear me out. IP theft is rampant on Etsy, be it from fan art that is very clearly not original IP, right? Like fan art is not covered legally. It's not legal. You can't sell fan art. If you want to give it away, that's fine. You can't sell it. You don't own the intellectual property. I don't care if you designed it from scratch. You don't own the intellectual property. We have talked with actual attorneys on this podcast about this, and they say the same thing. It's not legal. The thing is, a lot of places don't care because it's not enough. They're not getting hurt enough from this to deal with the attorneys and what it costs to go after people that are committing these IP theft violations. But look at it further from like, and Cinderwing is one of the few people that we could find on like Patreon that had put out a statement about all this stuff already. What if you took Cinderwing files for personal use and used it for commercial use? What is Cinderwing to do here? They now have to spend all their time finding the people that are stealing their stuff, file DMCA takedowns, and now there's a legal process that has to go through where the person saying, I own this, has to prove that you don't have the rights to use it. Etsy can now say, no, we're not dealing with this anymore. You file a DMCA, we're going to pull this right off the site immediately. And then if someone wants to fight it, they can fight it. But this allows Etsy to immediately, without any legal recourse whatsoever, to pull it down because it violates their terms of service. I don't see Etsy unilaterally applying this must clause. I see them utilizing it in maybe not so much edge cases, but specific cases of IP theft. And if it is someone that is consistently guilty of IP theft and they just don't say, no, I actually have the rights to do this, then they can ban their account. I think this is the easier way of policing intellectual property while getting around the kind of arduous DMCA system, but still allowing the system to operate, just not operate the legal way, operate the TOS way, the terms of service way, which
kind of like the YouTube
to me
approach
is safer.
of let them put anything on and only take it down if they get pissy that it's up there.
Exactly. And see, the big thing is, and we get this all the time, it's why you will rarely hear us using background music anymore in our live streams, because we use royalty-free music, but that royalty-free music, someone has claimed it and they will put a copyright claim. It's not different than a strike, it's a claim, where what will happen is all the money that video earns goes into escrow for 30 days, where you have the ability to say, no, this is legal, here's the license that we're using, yada, yada. And then YouTube goes back to the person that said, hey, no, this is mine. And then they have an opportunity to refute it. They never do. See, the trick is if you don't respond and refute it within 30 days, all that money from that stream in perpetuity now goes to the person that claimed the false copyright claim. What they do is they hope that your channel is big enough that you don't care about it, and the money that you receive from that goes to them indefinitely. And that is one of those like key things where this could come to bite Etsy in the butt, right? If they don't have a way of dealing with people.
I think this is a good move on Etsy's part. It gives them legal protection.
It gives them legal protection, yes, which is the big thing. Because if they don't want to, like follow DMCA proceedings, which I can promise you, pretty much nobody does. Right? Literally, DMCA proceedings are what the entire benchy BS started from, was because Prusa or Prusa Slicer, I should say, in an abundance of caution, removed benchy models because somebody filed a DMCA request, and it wasn't Creative Tools and then the company that worked with Creative Tools. It wasn't them. But Prusa doesn't know this. It's not their job to know this. It's not even their job to validate that the person doing it has the rights. It's your job as the designer or the person that posted the model to validate that they are that they are incorrect.
Yep.
You are guilty until proven innocent. That's the problem. And so when the internet went crazy, it wasn't even Creative Tools' fault. Now, ultimately, there was a success at the end of this where it was put into full open source, public domain and all of that. But dude, the initial challenge was rough. Everyone was pointing fingers at Creative Tools. Now the company that had bought them, they were pointing fingers at Prusa. They were making all these wild claims as the internet does without doing a dime of digging.
It was a powder keg of
it was a massive
spite.
powder keg. And myself and Zach Friedman were the only two that ever bothered to do any research. Zach's video is objectively better because he actually went to an attorney and got an attorney to speak on this. We didn't. I've spoken with enough attorneys throughout the day that I know how this works. But and Zach is thanked personally in that open source when they public domained it. He is thanked personally because that video that he made, because it got a ton of views, really helped bring attention to it. We got ours out before Zach did, but we don't have the audience that Zach has. That's life sometimes. But I'm glad that something came of it. There is, of course, an issue where this could happen as well, and Etsy will have to deal with it as it comes.
If you take most companies, there's only a very small slither between the entire business working and this tiny little bit that allows that to happen. And for especially a printing service, it is how do they work out their pricing? How do they work out which machine to use? And those are
that stuff is
small
easy to
choices
answer.
Done at the start. But if you give away slightly too much, it could quite easily mean that you give away what you shouldn't.
How do we do our pricing? We price what we think is reasonable for the parts if it was being custom made by someone, which it is. And if people complain about the price, we ask what about it doesn't work for them. And we try to see if they have a reasonable budget. We might work with them if they're going to be a long-term customer. Like we have a long-term customer that is committing to do a certain amount of business with us every single month. It's called a take or pay
I wasn't
contract.
getting at that bit. I was actually getting at because I think people already know that. Just charge what is required.
No, dude, you'd be surprised.
If you guys don't realize, charge what's required. But
says the person that doesn't charge what's required.
Shut up. Well, I don't know how to figure out how to charge. Now, that is what I think a lot of people will ask, and that is the black book stuff. That is the stuff where you go, okay, you need to be looking at this material, percentage.
It's all about the question. Yeah, it's all about the questions that you ask. And yeah, a lot of it is nuanced. There aren't answers to it that are black and white, like, oh yeah, you asked this question, this answer will tell you, what they can do. But dude, often now, one of my first questions is, what budget do you have for the project? And they'll normally come back and say, well, I just want a quote from you. I said, with all due respect, if we don't know what your intentions are with the project and we're not certain about how much you're willing to spend, we don't want to even look at quoting the job. We don't want to spend the time to do it. Because if your budget isn't realistic for what we ballpark this part is worth, then I don't want to go through the time that it takes to give you a quote. And there's a certain level of respect that has to occur from both sides for that back and forth to work. And it almost always does. Every now and then someone will say, what? You're just trying to get as much money out of me as possible. And while technically that is accurate, right? A business, I'm trying to extract as much value as I can. But at the same time, I'm just making sure that I'm not wasting your time and you're not going to waste mine. And if we are, I want to solve the problem for you and get you to someone who's going to help you get things done. So really, I'm just trying to save everybody some time here. First question, why have you come to us, Matt's Makerspace? Sometimes that can just be, well, come on, idiot, I want a 3D printed part. There are nicer ways to ask that ask the same question, but without getting the, what do you think, bonehead kind of answers, right? A lot of this is that interpersonal communication, that nuance that I don't really believe email holds up in real life. And you often need to just make a 5-minute phone call. Like with this customer, with this take or pay contract, They reached out to us to do 5 pieces for them, and that's it. I called them to get a better understanding of what this project is, what it's for, so that we can do the right infill percentages and wall thicknesses and all that. They said, actually, it's going to, this is the first kind of initial run of a much larger part. And there you go. Now I know what their intention is. I can now work with them to get them a better upfront price if they agree to a long-term production setup, which they did. And I have it contractually obligated that they will pay us X amount of money per month, no matter how many pieces they make. If they go above this amount of money, then they just pay me the difference. If they go below it, or if they go above it, they pay me the extra on top of it. Yep. If they go below it, they pay me my bare minimum every single month. And that is how they negotiated a better price. We put them under a take or pay. And if for some reason they don't pay us, I send a nice lawyer. And the lawyer takes care of the problems. We don't do take or pay contracts for small money, to be clear. Like, you have to be doing thousands of dollars a month with us to even consider a take or pay contract, because it's not worth it otherwise. I have to make sure that the attorney's fees are worth it if you don't, But yeah, I think it would be